Greetings, everybody. Before we get started, just one very simple question. Are you ethical? Now, that might seem like kind of an obvious, oh, of course I'm ethical. But it's not. It's really not. And that's where we have to jump off from today. And it's all about, are you ethical? Now, as you think about that question, and I do want you to actually have an answer in your head, and I can actually be psychic and tell you that 99% of you are sitting there going, heck yes, I'm ethical. I'm very ethical. Excuse me, Carl, apparently you don't know who you're talking to. I am like the most ethical person ever put on the face of the planet. Well, yeah, but are you? And that begs this question. It's essentially the big question, and in order to answer it, you really have to know what ethics are. Ethics, and the root of the word ethic comes from ethos. It comes from the Greek, and ethos is about the culture. It's about the norms, and that basically goes back to kind of a weirder question: are you normal? And that's one that we always have to kind of, well, gee, I think I'm pretty darn normal, Carl. Well, nice to be you, but what's normal? Those are questions that we need to answer, and not only for ourselves, but what I want you to do is, if you're in an office right now or in a space where there's another human being, someplace line of sight, I'd like you to sight in on that person. Just glance over at him or her. Yeah, just go ahead and get them on your radar. Good. Okay. Great. Now you've got them on radar. Those of you who don't have anybody line of sight because you're sitting in the comfort of your own closed-door office, or you're not in the office right now, you happen to be doing this, hopefully not in your car, but you've got this going on someplace else. Think about somebody who you deal with on a day-to-day basis. Are they ethical? Now, it's very easy credit. Well, it's me. Of course I'm ethical. And then it goes to them. Are they ethical? You know, when it comes to cultural norms and breaking rules, ethics, would you ever violate the law? Would you ever knowingly violate the law? Now, I know a lot of you are sitting there shaking your heads no right now, and I need you to know something. Even though you say you'd never violate the law, well, do you ever go above 65 and a posted 65? Oh, Carl, that doesn't count. That's not about ethics. That's speeding. That's kind of like the white lie version of ethics. Is it? Is it really? Well, ethics ties to honesty. Ethics ties to truth. Ethics ties to being true to a given set of moral standards. And the moral standards are normally represented, and the law says you're not supposed to be going over 65 miles an hour on the highway. And yet many of us regularly and egregiously break that law. Are we ethical? Carl, I would suggest to you, yes, we are. Of course we are. That's a specious question at best. It's not. It's really not. It's a matter of which rules you choose to follow, which rules you choose to break. And that's really one of the big things about risk and risk ethics. It's a matter of being honest about which ones you choose to break. It's kind of noteworthy in that I used the speeding example. Many of us ritually, and I mean ritually, we do it all the time, we violate that little speeding law. And yet, if an officer of the law came up to you and said, I caught you doing 66 in a 65 mile an hour zone, I tell you that more than half the people on this call would be indignant. 6, that could be variability in my speedometer, although it wasn't. You thought you were doing 68. Or pulled you over for doing 66, and you're still indignant. Indignant? Well, it's only a mile. It's only a little breach of the law. Well, are you a little unethical? Today, this is where we're going to go because it goes to your organization and the lines that people draw. The lines that people draw. And speaking of lines that people draw, I have to admit, when I was a kid, when I was like first, second grade, and I had coloring books. I had an infinite supply of coloring books, and I got to tell you, I hated every one of them. I was not one of these kids who thrilled at the honor to pick up my fresh Crayolas and sniff the Binney and Smith smell and start drawing with my crayons. No, not this soldier. because I couldn't stay inside the lines to save my soul. I have zero hand-eye coordination, and I acknowledge that as an adult. But as a kid, it drove me crazy. Now, if I was drawing the lines and I was drawing stuff, I was okay. But when I had to stay within their lines, man, that was a problem. Now, note, I didn't have any problem when I was the one drawing the lines. The problem came when other people had drawn the lines for me. This is a big part of what we're going to discuss during the course of our time together today. This is exactly where we're going to be going. And it goes to the basics of, well, risk ethics. Now, I need to explain to you a little feature about WebEx. I need you to be aware of something you can do on WebEx. Down below your name, you'll see the list of attendees. You'll see there's a little hand raise function, and next to it, you'll see a little feedback box. And if you click on that feedback box, it gives you a drop-down menu, and it says yes, no, too fast, too slow, applause, or laughter. Now, what I'd like you to do, I'm going to ask you these questions, and I'm going to ask you to yes-no them as we go through them. And I realize not everybody will be able to use that function, but for those of you who can, I'd be curious to see and kind of want to talk to a few of you in particular. But what I'd like you to do is specifically using that drop-down menu that's next to the hand raise function, the little zero, I'm going to ask you to answer yes, no to the first question up here. Now, notice the question. Now, the import-export dealer is not criminal. The jewel is somebody in a foreign country, and you've been trying to get things through customs, and they won't go through. And all the local officials keep going, you know, a little grease on the skids would help. And you're, I can't do that. But here's this import-export dealer who says, you have no problem. I will take care of it for you. Everything's going to be fine. All you need to do is pay my standard fee. Now, they invoice you for their standard fee. It's above the line. Everything's good with them. But in your heart of hearts, you know they're just going to take part of their fee, turn it into a bribe, and get your stuff through customs. We import-export dealer. And just or no in that little feedback function, if you would, and I'm just going to take a look at how you're faring here. If you wouldn't mind doing that for me, just click yes or no from that little drop-down menu. Just go ahead and do that. It's the little box next to the hand raise. You may not have it at your disposal. You know what? If you would pay the import-export dealer, if you would pay the import-export person, let me ask you to just raise your hand. Just go ahead and raise your hand for a moment, and I'll see who's raising their hand. Great. That helps a lot. So Eric would, Paul would, Ann would, Hugo would. Geez, Dana, good for you. Now, all these people are willing to pay the import-export dealer. Is that ethical? They never told me they were going to pay a bribe. I had no idea. I have plausible deniability. You know, any phrase that was invented during the Watergate era is something that we genuinely need to worry about when it comes to ethics. Because it's true. I mean, none of you are going to get busted for paying the import-export dealer. Why? Because it was above the line. They invoiced you. You paid them their invoice, and they got your stuff through customs. But in your heart of hearts, is that being ethical? And that's the real question. That's the real challenge that we face here. That's the real thing that we've got to understand, is that we have to know before these events come to pass. And that's really critical, because ethics are around us at all times. The ethos of our culture is with us at all times. Yet risk is a future phenomenon